I'm Elisa Parker. We're here at the Wild and Scenic Film Festival. It is the largest film festival of its kind in the United States. So we're highlighting stories around climate justice, environmental action, the outdoors as well. Agriculture is a big part of that, and the food that we make and grow and create, and knowing where things come from. We are amplifying the stories through this to create change and the solutions that are connected with that. And we have been seeing such a significant movement with our youth, more so than I've ever seen in being an activist myself, and it's really inspiring. So it's such an honor to have with us here Jordan Hartzell. She is with the film Abundance, the Farmlink story. And Jordan, welcome to Wild and Scenic.
Thank you very much.
This
Honored to be here.
It's great to have you here. So this is your first time at Wild and Scenic.
It is, and my first time in Nevada City as well.
Oh, the first time in Nevada. Well, welcome.
Thank you.
It's a little bit of a vortex town.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get here and then you don't leave. People end up coming back. It's true.
I can see why.
Yeah, and you moved recently. Well, you're now in San Francisco.
Yes, I'm from Pennsylvania though. I grew up in a small town myself.
So the film that takes place in the East Coast?
We were actually fully remote at the time. So
you were fully remote. Oh,
that's
because
correct.
of COVID. So
yes.
Well, tell everyone about the film. And what I love about this too is how you all optimize the pandemic.
Thank you very much. So some friends and I started an organization called the Farmlink Project, and it was born out of the pandemic when we were all sent home from colleges, and we're living with our parents for the first time in years. And we saw these headlines saying that folks were relying on the charitable food system more than they ever had before. People were being laid off at really high rates. And the charitable food system just wasn't meant to handle stressors like that. And so we saw, drone shots of lines at food banks stretching miles long.
That was shocking, especially at the time being here in a small town. I really didn't have as much awareness in some of the cities where, people were waiting for hours, like miles of cars waiting to go to the food bank.
Right, and maybe not even getting food at the end of that line. And at the same time, we're also seeing headlines that said that farmers and other growers, producers, people involved in the food system had tons of surplus produce that they were either not getting to the end shelf or, onto people's tables because restaurants, cafeterias were all closed down in the pandemic. And they were actually just leaving food in the fields or tilling it back under. And so we thought, these two problems seem like they maybe could solve each other. And so we started calling farmers, started calling food banks and said, can we connect these dots? Can we raise some money to get trucks from farms to food banks? And we started redistributing and recovering that produce.
So, and then the other thing that was happening too is kids aren't in school. So also kids that normally would be sustaining on school lunches and school meals also weren't getting those. And so even hearing about some of the stories, like someone at the food bank says, a little girl passed out and it turned out she hadn't eaten actually in several days.
That's correct.
So here you go, you jump in to solve this problem. Initially, you're connecting with these smaller farms, and what was happening in that situation?
So actually in the pandemic, we thought, we'll call these small farms, we're seeing that they have surplus and this will be effective. But local buying actually spiked, and it was the commercial farms that had a ton of surplus. And our first hit was the farmer mentioned in the article in the New York Times that got everybody excited about the possibility of meeting higher demand in the hunger space and the charitable food space with this surplus produce. The person who was mentioned had about 2 million pounds of surplus onions. So
oh
he
my
was
God,
the
it's
first
insane.
one.
Yeah, I mean, in the visual, in the video, he's in this big, it's not really a warehouse, I don't know what you would call it. And you're standing on the onions. There are so many onions.
Truly.
It's like, what am I going to do with these?
Yeah.
So, but do you know, by the way, the percentage of commercial farming, the percentage of that in our country compared to the small farms?
That is a good question. I actually don't know that percentage. The small town that I come from did have a lot of small farms, and it's been interesting to see on the East Coast where things, felt a little more local, and then coming to the West Coast, I'm having this exposure to really large farms, but I don't know that percentage.
Well, so now, but it's also interesting with the commercial farmers who would normally, I think, be going with these large retailers, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's getting very grassroots, is what your story's highlighting. So tell us about that experience, for example, with the millions of pounds of onions and how you optimize that to ensure it was in the hands of the community members who needed it most.
Sure. So in that first move of onions from the warehouse where they were being stored back to the community, we weren't able to move all of the 1 million pounds at once. We started just with one phone call, one truck, one food bank. And so we said, can you just divert the truck that's going to the landfill, the truck that's going back to the fields to put these onions back? can you just divert that to a food bank, and we'll cover the costs. And so because all of that was handled by phone calls, Google spreadsheets, we actually started this entire organization over Zoom. And so out of the pandemic, yes, we got online classes and kind of the very painful online infrastructure that,
Yes.
pardon me, that made up the digital workplaces we all had to go through. It also allowed us to have this distributed network of students all across the country who could start making these calls. And so, if a student had 15 extra minutes during the day, they could hop on with us and call a couple farms and get us a couple contacts and spread the word. And so we were able to be all over the country just by the virtue of students, joining remotely.
So starting with the onion farmer, what did that look like doing? You mentioned nationally. So where is it now? And tell us about some of the successes of the program now.
Sure. So the Farmlink project to date has moved over 140 million pounds of produce.
Wow.
Thank you. Yeah, it's incredibly exciting. We've worked with over 600 students. We've shown Abundance, the Farmlink story, this film at COP28 in Dubai on the floor of Congress. And we've just been really lucky to spread the word about the food system and reducing waste and also reducing hunger in America.
That is incredible. And by the way, was food growing your passion before? What is your interest in this?
I completely fell into this. I came from a background of studying computer science and math in college. I joined to help build the website. And then just the logistics problem was super interesting to me. And so I actually kind of changed my career path after spending a year working on the Farmlink project. I took a year off of college, and then by the time I came back, I knew I wanted to work in environmental work. And so I'm still in the food space now, this time working in consumer tech, trying to flex my computer science skills a bit, but it completely changed how I think about my career.
Wow. Well, nowadays, I think we have the creative freedom to create these hybrids.
Yeah.
Of coupling your experience in tech with also the need to feed people.
Totally.
So where can folks go to get more information? How can they get involved in this?
So first, think deeply about your food and what you do with it. Visit farmlinkproject.org and in any community space, we're looking to spread the word by showing Abundance, the Farmlink story.
It's amazing. Has the film screened yet?
Yes, it has screened at over 61 locations.
Wow. And what about here at Wild and Scenic?
Today, it's screened this morning. Yes.
Oh, congratulations.
We were really lucky to get to show it at the end of the first session.
Oh my gosh, Jordan Hartzell, what an inspiration. Thank you so much for everything you're doing. Please keep us abreast on what you're doing, and I know you're going to be returning here, and it's just phenomenal. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
We
it's a
appreciate
pleasure.
it. Yeah, I'm Elisa Parker. It's the Wild and Scenic Film Fest. Be inspired and move into action. When you hear stories like this, I don't know how you can't be. Thanks so much for being part of this, and we will be back shortly.